Hi, this is John Kavicki, Intellectual Property Librarian and Professor at the UNH School of Law Library. It's my job today to cover international patent legal research tools and strategies, building upon the foundation that you've already received in the course to date. I've tried to build into each one of the slides icons to help you understand each of the tools that we're looking at. Surveys of the graduate students show that about 50% of them have access to Lexis and Westlaw. So I have tried to, as much as possible, integrate open web sources so that you'll have access to tools that you need when you're in the field. Looking at the icons, in the upper left is the finger icon that indicates that the slide image is hyperlinked and that you can use the resource underneath. The next one to the right is the open source icon, indicating that it's an open website. You might have to subscribe to this site, but there's no fee associated. The next two, of course, are Lexis and Westlaw, which you have access to as members of this class. In the lower left is the membership icon. In the patent field, there's many professional associations and non-governmental organizations that offer content, but you have to sign up as a member. And your membership may be no cost or low cost or premium, and that will determine the amount of content. The next icon, of course, is the dollar symbol. That indicates that it's a premium service, a for-fee service that you'll have to pay for in some way. The next icon to the right is the maroon-colored book icon, indicating that that particular tool is available from Lexis Publishing in print. And finally, the one next to that in orange is the Thomson book icon, indicating that that is also available in print. Print resources are available in many corporate and law firm libraries, as well as the UNH School of Law Intellectual Property Library. This module is about international patent legal research, but I think it's fun to zoom out and look at the different types of transactions within the patent practice field. Many people consider patent practice as prosecuting a patent, but there are many stages within the life cycle of patent law, and at each stage you might be called upon to do some type of research. This research might be legal research, or it might be fact research, or it might be researching public records. Patent searching, for example, is considered a type of public record searching. If you take a look, there's the different stages of the life cycle. For example, there is the prosecution of the patent, and there's defending a patent, patent infringement litigation, monetization, licensing law, that type of thing, strategizing what to do, patent portfolio management. At each of the stages in the life cycle, you have to decide what type of information resources you need to make the best type of business decision and manage the portfolio. We now go one step further in the patent life cycle concept. This chart was developed by Landon IP, a patent practice service provider. It has the same stages of the life cycle that we looked at before, but lists various research tasks that you would have to do at each stage in the life cycle. Now you have to look at each of these and question to what extent it's legal research, to what extent you'd have to do this particular research task in the international patent practice setting. The focus of this module is on international patent legal research, tools and strategies, and not foreign law research. Foreign law research being what is the patent law of the individual nations, although the theme will go forward in this module looking at why you would need to know national law along with international law in patent practice. I recently interviewed Christopher Firking, Professor of Law and Director of the Patent Practice and Procedure Program at UNH School of Law. And I said to him, Chris, what are the types of purely international patent law transactions that you'd perform as a patent practitioner. And he said, well, international patent law is really kind of vague, that the real action is with the national patent laws, where you'd have to prosecute or defend a patent. And he said another question is, there's a real question as to the limits of harmonization. To what extent are the national laws in compliance with the international standards? An example would be the TRIPS agreement. And there's a number of ongoing disputes regarding whether countries' laws are in conformity with the TRIPS agreement. He went on to explain that most patent lawyers don't deal with international law issues on a day-to-day basis, as most of these involve disputes between governments. Patent practitioners do need to know about international law when they are dealing with a particular jurisdiction that may have adopted a treaty. For example, the Patent Cooperation Treaty. What are the rules that you need to follow to file an application? What are the stages of the Patent Cooperation Treaty? And we'll take a look at these later. Also, for counseling purposes, for a client or an employer, looking at the whether a particular country that you want to do business in is compliant. For purposes of prosecuting a patent or enforcing a patent, how do you get jurisdiction in a particular country? If you get a judgment, how do you enforce that? Patent practice and patent legal research intersect with business law and business transactions. So it's really important for you to ask what you're being asked to research. Is this fact research? Is it legal research? Public record research? As we're going to see, international instruments can affect domestic practice. You might be asked to be involved in managing a portfolio, and there's a myriad of issues and information resources associated with that. Or you could be part of an international business transaction, a licensing deal, merger and acquisition, and those are different tools also. So where we're heading towards is an understanding that you oftentimes have to be familiar with both international and national primary sources of law. Is the jurisdiction that you're looking at in conformity with conventions? Your research may have to be both national and international. Patent lawyers oftentimes will refer to international sources when they're really talking about national sources of law. And it's going to get more complicated. We're going to take a look at sources such as the European Parliament Directive dealing with the legal protection of biotechnological inventions. As you can see, it states, member states shall protect biotechnological inventions under national patent law. So if you want to do business in Europe, you really have to take a look at each individual country to make a decision whether they're in conformity with that particular law. This interrelationship between international and national laws goes way back to the signing of the Paris Convention, which established what's known as the national treatment principle, that a signatory to the Paris Convention is only required not to discriminate against foreign parties in the granting and enforcement of patent rights. The Paris Convention provisions don't require a country to recognize the validity of a foreign patent that would not be patentable under that country's patent laws. So this comes up, for example, in the business method patent context. Can you take your U.S. business method patent and enforce it in another country, or get a patent granted in that particular country when that country does not recognize a business method patent? If you want to ponder this topic more deeply, take a look at this slide prepared by Emeritus Professor William Hennessy author of the Treatise on International Patent Law and Practice. Few would dispute that in a complex global economy, patents function as tools for innovation and tools for business development. These are the types of international law that you've learned so far in this course: public international law, judicial decisions, juristic writings, and private international law. And we're going to take a look at each one of these within the patent context. When I begin to do legal research in a new area of law, I often like to take a look for an overview tool, a book or a website that will bring all of the facets of the area of law together so I can get a look at the big picture. This is often found in a textbook on the subject. Here we have the table of contents from Professor Hennessy's textbook on international patent law. The chapter titles often form an outline of the topic of law. For example, Chapter 1, Overview and Introduction, Chapter 2, Comparative Principles of Patent Law, International Law and Institutions, International Treaties and Agreements in the Patent Area, Disputes between States, Mechanism for the Acquisition of Patent and Design Rights, International Enforcement of Rights, and Issues in International IP and Policy Looking Forward. Here we learn from the outset several things. First of all, the World Intellectual Property Organization, known as WIPO, is a major open source site for international patent law resources. We also notice that WIPO administers a majority of the patent treaties in the world. We're next introduced to the open source site by the World Trade Organization that administers the Agreement on Trade-Related Aspects of Intellectual Property Rights, also known as the TRIPS Agreement. We'll be looking at TRIPS Agreement resources later in this module. In addition to treaties by the World Intellectual Property Organization and WTO, there are numerous regional patent conventions, such as the European Patent Convention, a REPO covering African countries, and the Eurasian Patent Organization, all of these having open source websites. In addition to administering major patent treaties of the World Intellectual Property Organization hosts a wealth of information on the topic of international private law and patent practice. While not an organization centered on patent law and practice, the Hague Conference on Private International Law has a wealth of material that might be useful to a patent lawyer on issues including choices of law, jurisdiction, and enforcing judgments. We're now going to transition from an overview of international patent law research into secondary sources. Secondary sources, as you know, help us find international patent laws, but also understand international patent law and practice. Researchers quickly realize that there really are only a handful of secondary sources that deal exclusively with international patent legal research, and generally they turn to a broader toolbox of secondary sources covering areas such as international law, patent law with parts that deal with international law, intellectual property, secondary sources that talk about international law, general tools that deal with geographic regions such as Europe that have a piece on international patent law, international IP tools with a patent piece, dedicated patent law tools that have an international piece, and I think you can see how this plays out. One illustrative title is World Patent Law and Practice by Lexis Publishing. It's available on Lexis and in print. It has national patent statutes and regulation. It also has treaties, but treaties are only a small part. It has decisions by the European Patent Office, but has very little analytics in terms of international patents. So really what is considered the leading treatise can't be used as a standalone product by an international patent lawyer. So in terms of the open web, it's often called the free web, but nothing in life is free. We will see in succeeding slides a lot of the primary sources that are available that are quite good. And it depends on how you define secondary sources as to whether the open web provides secondary source material on international patent law. A lot of material, Lexis Westlaw, a lot of the proprietary services are part of the deep web, meaning that you really need a subscription or a password to get in, and that Google will not index the stuff. So if you look upon secondary source material as being reports from NGOs, non-governmental organizations, the World Trade Organization, WIPO, law firms, and trade associations do have a lot of material, but are they researched and analytical and academic? The answer is generally not, with a few exceptions. We'll take a look at that. One exception being, for example, legal periodical literature, which for the most part is available on the open web. So let's just hang on and take a look. One handy thing to note with the open web, but in generally with all types of legal research and international patent legal research, is that you'll see titles of websites and titles of treatises and law reviews and everything talking about global patent law or world patent law. And oftentimes this means foreign law, national laws, or the interrelationship of the two. So it's very. I think Professor Zago has probably talked to you about this in other contexts, that something that may look like an extremely helpful site may be global patent resource, might be national in scope and not international. Same for world. So keep your eyes open. In a minute we'll take a look. Taking a further dive into the topic of treatises, you have to be careful because there's so many treatises on patent law and international patent law, but they're not oriented towards the practitioner. There's different types of treatises. There's practice-based materials, and then there's really academic treatises dealing with esoteric subjects. And so the stuff that is most helpful for a practitioner deals with the practice of law. So, one example here is Winning Legal Strategies, International Patent Law, and, for example, Global Patents, Limits of Transnational Enforcement. You're going to find that there's publishers that may be different than that you've dealt with before. Of course, practice materials will come to you from Lexis Publishing and Thomson Reuters Publishing, as well as Kluwer and BNA, and then the more academic titles, actually it's mixed between academic and practice, come from publishers like Edward Elgar, Oxford University Press, Cambridge University Press, and you can tell by titles sometimes and sometimes not. So let's hang on and take a look. Because of the uncontrolled nature of titles of books, treatises I should say, it's often difficult to run a title search or a keyword search in an online catalog, be it your law school that you're at, or a public library, or on the internet using a tool such as OCLC's WorldCat, which is the catalog of catalogs, where thousands of libraries contribute their records. One way to do it is an approach that a lot of people don't take when using online catalogs, which is the subject search. So here, for example, is an example of UNH School of Law's subject heading for Patents Parens International Law. When you look at that, there's 162 titles on international patent law. So that's about as granular as you're going to get when it comes to finding treatises on patent law. You still have to go through and look at those, and in terms of what is a practice-oriented title and what is a more academic-oriented title. But it is a way to parse out within the big universe of patent law titles which ones deal with international law. Subject headings are assigned by catalogers. Catalogers at the Library of Congress, catalogers at your local library, your law school library. And so there's human intervention in a human being has looked at the particular title and tagged it, if you want to use the more modern term, tagged it as dealing with international patent law. And once again, we take a really quick peek at World Patent Law and Practice, which brings home the theme we were just talking about. World Patent Law and Practice, of course, is indexed under the subject heading International Patent Law, but as we saw, it does contain all of the major treaties, but not with analytics, and mixed in with national patent statutes, national regulations, and decisions from bodies like the European Patent Office. Probably one of the most important treaties for international patent lawyers is the WIPO Patent Cooperation Treaty, otherwise known as PCT. Some people say PCT practice. It outlines an application process where if you want to file and get coverage in other countries, you can file an application and have it examined through the PCT system, and then after that elect to have it go through what's known as the national stage in the various countries, and that is when you pay the fees and get the local patents at the national level. There are a lot of materials, both on the open web and in terms of treatises. Let's take a look at a few of the premium treatise materials. This just illustrates this in a snapshot the complexity of the PCT system and the phases of the system. It's not that difficult after you learn it, but it has a steep learning curve in the beginning. The course materials taught by WIPO and their authorized PCT trainers are available in most major cities. The WIPO offers training in PCT practice in every major city throughout the United States and around the world. And so let's take a look at some of those materials. In terms of secondary sources such as treatises on PCT practice, there are some really good ones. Of course, the PCT Applicant's Guide, which I would say is somewhat analogous to the MPEP in the United States, the Manual of Patent Examining Procedure, lays out the rules followed by examiners at WIPO when they examine a PCT application. On the left, we see a print publication, the Patent Cooperation Treaty Handbook by Thomson Publishing. It is a loosely service. It is kept up to date. And it also illustrates that, well, most of the Thomson portfolio is on Westlaw. This is one that is not on Westlaw and would have to be obtained in print. In the center is a newer treatise, the Practitioner's Guide to the PCT, published by the American Bar Association Press. It's another resource that's always good to look at is the ABA Press. It has a lot of that type of material. So there's a lot of material on PCT, of course, on the WIPO website, and we'll take a look at that a little bit more later. This next resource is also by Thomson Publishing, It's available in print, and this one is on Westlaw, unlike the last treatise that we looked at. This one is centers on practice in the United Kingdom. It's co-authored by the Chartered Institute of Patent Agents in the United Kingdom, and it's a guide to patent acts. But as you can see within this one treatise that is kept up to date, both online and in print, it has cases, it has European Patent Office decisions, statutory instruments, court rules, international conventions, treaties, related rules and regs that are centered towards the European Patent Office, and the European Patent Office guidelines. So this is a really good one-stop shop for practitioners in Europe. Europe is one of the most difficult areas to practice because you have overlapping international systems in place. Law students in the U.S. seem to be stuck on using Lexis and Westlaw, and they seldom venture beyond the corners of those services. At UNH School of Law, we offer a whole variety of licensed electronic resources, especially in the area of intellectual property. One of those is Kluwer IP Law. Kluwer IP Law is a resource that is worth exploring on your own. You can get to it by going to the library page and clicking on electronic services and then looking through it. It has practice tools, it has books, it has journals, it has WIPO materials and European Patent Office materials. It's very European Patent Office centric. So it's worth really taking a look because it does have primary and secondary sources. Most treatise material in the U.S. is not available in electronic format, and so that is what is unique about this. It does have a lot of treatise material. So take a look at it and let us know what you think. The proprietary online service available through the library webpage is the Foreign Law Guide by Brill Online. And the neat value-added part about this treatise online is that you can go to the country, look at it, and in certain instances it'll tell you whether the country is a member of a particular treaty. Here, for example, is the page on India, and the arrow at the bottom shows that India is a member of the Budapest Microorganism Treaty of 2001. So take a look at Brill and decide how much content it does and where it fits into your research portfolio. It's a good time to remind you all to take a look at LibGuides. LibGuides are prepared by 8,500 librarians at 500 libraries worldwide. Some are law, some are non-law. There's all types of library guides. I noticed that the preview, 2 of the 3 preview readings that I gave you are library guides, one from Boston University and the other from William Mitchell School of Law, and they are really good. You can search the site directly to find other libraries that have guides dealing with international patent law. These get you into different treatises because, of course, libraries all don't buy the same titles. So you should see a lot of overlap in these. And when you do see the overlap, that's a good thing because it helps you realize that you really do understand the legal research landscape when it comes to materials in international patent law research. We're going to switch gears for a moment. We're going to switch from treatises to legal periodical literature. Many of you are used to using periodical indexes online as part of your undergraduate or graduate experience, and the same is true for law school education. Westlaw Next and Lexis both offer indexes as well as full-text databases of legal periodical literature. One of my favorite tools is the Legal Resource Index, which links to the full text if it's available on Lexis or Westlaw. And as you can see from the search results here, there are many, many articles dealing, actually over 1,000 in the Legal Resource Index, dealing with international patent law. So it seems to be one space that is easier to access material. Of course, it is subject to the notion that the articles are all over the place in terms of academic and practice-based, and it's up to you to go through, and there's really no way to tell. So you'll have to brush up those skills, and you can also do a full text search in the one box on Lexis or Westlaw and filter down to secondary sources and then down to legal periodicals. That's another way to get to this information. But definitely, and also note that you can look at the footnotes within legal periodical literature to get a lot of references to primary and other secondary sources that help advance your research process. A few more words on legal periodical literature, commonly known by law students as law reviews, but really encompasses a much broader spectrum of content. This will help you keep on top of issues in international patent law. Just be aware, as I said formally, that the tone of the material in these databases can be academic and can at times be dated. So you possibly want to keep an eye open for news-oriented sources within the legal periodical literature space. The idea is to mix and match these sources with news sources and other current awareness tools that we're going to talk about, social media and the like. Don't forget that this legal periodical literature is one area of legal research resources that you can access rather comprehensively via the open web and Google Scholar. Just be aware that there are some law review articles that are not available, but at least in the law school setting, Google Scholar is good about telling you that it is available on services like Hein Online, which are available to you as a student at UNH School of Law. Another noteworthy site is the Legal Scholarship Network that is linked to SSRN. SSRN is a social science research network. One of the beauties of this is that there is content here by law professors and practitioners that is not available on the open web and not available on Lexis and Westlaw. These are part of the deep web, since you have to, Google does not index these. You have to get into the Legal Scholarship Network and do a search, and there are articles that are part of working paper series. This is content by law professors on subjects like international patent research that are not part of any other database. So a lot of people don't go into the Legal Scholarship Network and miss a lot of great content. The good and the bad of all legal periodical literature in international patent law is that it's very interdisciplinary. And that is the beauty, and that is also the curse of it. You've got articles that deal with policy and social sciences, like access to medications and the TRIPS agreement. On the other hand, you've got articles dealing with international patent and business and the role of patents in international business and innovation and economics. And also, don't rule out considering non-legal journals. JSTOR and EBSCOhost and others that you might have access to. Since I am such a fan of the Legal Scholarship Network within the SSRN family, I just wanted to show you a sample of what you get when you do a search within there. This is an article by Dinwoody, who's a really globally famous scholar on international patent law, and it's an article on private international intellectual property law and the demise of territoriality, which I understand is a pretty hot topic and has been discussed. This one, as you look at the screen, is part of the accepted paper series. So it was published in William and Mary Law Review, but it was also published here as part of the Oxford Legal Studies research paper. And a lot of schools put up content as part of working paper series that are exclusive to the Legal Scholarship Network. Here we have private international IP law, an area that you don't find anything out on very much on the open web, and you find it here at SSRN. So this is just a consciousness-raising slide. Before we leave the world of secondary source material, I just mentioned another hybrid tool that is by Thomson Publishing, and this is another one that is available in print, but doesn't appear on Westlaw at this time. And you might say to yourself, why does Thomson have so much European patent material and treatises? And the answer is that Thomson bought a company called Sweet and Maxwell a number of years ago and took all of the content over from them to enhance their IP portfolio of titles. So the European Patent Source Finder helps you handle European questions. It's got materials from the EPO and the national courts and national patent offices. Scraping out the patent-related decisions in Europe can be really kind of challenging. And so that is the value added of this publication. And that's one thing that you need to develop from an information literacy standpoint, is looking at each individual website or publication tool and figuring out what is it value added, how does it fit in the research portfolio, when would I use it, and can I find an alternative maybe that does not cost anything. So this particular tool is a really great tool. It indexes more than 2,000 references with summaries to most important materials within the European Patent Office, EPO convention law, practice and procedure. So when you get access to it, it's a good day. But we've now come to that point in the guest lecture where we may hit what you might consider the main event, looking at sources for international patent conventions and treaties. Although, it's really good to understand that you need to understand the introductory material, the scope of international patent practice, as well as the secondary sources that help you locate sources that you need and interpret them before you actually dive in. Because I can tell you, when you open up World Patent Law and Practice directly into the treaties, you are staring at thousands of pages of undigested law. So if you want it, we're going to go get it now. As we start our look at sources of the actual treaties themselves and the conventions, we sort of circle back a little bit to secondary sources just to make one comment, which is information literacy has us evaluate particular tools. Now, this particular treatise, International Patent Treatise with Commentary by Nisbet, is published by Oceana Publications. It's not an electronic format, and it's not kept up to date with pocket parts or new editions. So what looks good on its face, what looks good from a card catalog, can really be a dog when it comes to current information and giving you the right answer. So this is the type of mindset to develop when evaluating websites and other tools that you may use. May look good on its face, but turn into a big bow wow. We started out earlier in our overview part looking at really the major sources for treaty collections in patent law area. And we talked about WPO, WIPO, and WTO, and we looked at regional conventions. But let me say that by no means do you require Lexis or Westlaw to do treaty research. There are very good and robust treaty collections on the internet. This is a listing of various services that you can use. These are all hyperlinked if you desire to click on them. But they bring home an earlier theme that I was talking about, which is mixing and matching. So on the same law list with WIPO is a tool like GlobalX or Juris International. All these sites have the patent treaties of the world, but you got to dig for them. So that is the question that you should look at in information literacy. It's like, if I can drive up to WIPO and get what I'm looking for immediately, that might be preferable to going to one of these other sites that might function just perfectly for other topical areas of law. As we've mentioned several times, WIPO administers a majority of the patent treaties around the world. We looked at the treaty portal. WIPO is like a supermarket in that there's a lot of great places in the supermarket to go to lead yourself to treaty material, both primary and secondary sources. And WIPO-Lex is another one of their entry portals to treaty materials. You might have seen in the live guides that were introductory to this module, WIPO Gold. WIPO Gold is just another front-end entry page that leads you to the same place. This is great in that, recall, we talked about using national laws in conjunction with international treaties, and this is a portal to those national laws. But always the question you must ask yourself is, what is the duty of the particular information provider to keep the information up to date? Lexis and Westlaw and the other proprietary sources are for pay. You pay them to keep it up to date. WIPO is a non-governmental organization, which is not to say that their treaty collection is not up to date, but there is that lack of commercial incentive to keep everything absolutely fresh. So you have to be the judge. The University of Alicante Intellectual Property and Information Technology portal illustrates a couple points when we're talking about treaty research. First of all, it is a volunteer site. It's a law school site, and those can be excellent and contain materials, but once again with the caveat that there's no commercial incentive to keep the information completely up to date. That said, if you look at this, the Alicante site does have a lot of good patent-related treaty material and European treaty material, and so it is worth exploring this as a volunteer site and comparing it against, for example, WIPO to decide whether it adds any value or you're going to throw it in the electronic trash bin. Here we see Lexis.com's collection of intellectual property treaties doing a focus search for the term patent. Both Lexis and Westlaw are in a state of transition, getting all of their international materials over to their new portals, Westlaw Next and Lexis Advance. So you really have to keep your eye on Lexis and Westlaw when you're dealing with international materials. Some of them are quite good, and some of them are moving. It's like a moving target. Change is constant is the saying in legal research and in life in general. And so you have to use information literacy skills to determine whether or not Lexis and Westlaw add any value to that entire big, huge portfolio of open web sources for international law in terms of the raw primary sources of law. Also note that Lexis.com is still available. It's the old style site. It's available from the Lexis Advanced menus. You can get there. Westlaw, on the other hand, has pulled Westlaw.com from law schools, and so anything that was on Westlaw.com that has not been moved over to date, and there are international patent materials that have not been moved over, you lose out. So it's just something that you always have to stay mindful of when you're using Lexis and Westlaw. One value-added feature on Lexis Advance is access to material that are referred to as IP manuals. IP manuals both provide the law, but also give a little analytics on the law. So this service was purchased by Lexis. It's the IPQuestor service, and integrated into Lexis Advance. So you're not going to see IPQuestor, but you're going to run into the material. So when you do, one of the value addeds is to look for the analytical side to it, because you can probably get the primary treatise material on the open web. Lexis and Westlaw tend to try to compete like Ford and Chevrolet to have titles that are equivalent. And this is all areas of law in general. So Lexis has World Patent Law and Practice that we've discussed. Westlaw has patents throughout the world, a multi-volume loose leaf service also available online on Westlaw Online. Like World Patent Law and Practice, it has also deals with national patent statutes and regulations, as well as treaty material. It does have a little bit more analytics to it. So this is another title that has that world in the title, and we're never sure exactly what's inside until we get in and search it. It's a useful tool along with the World Patent Law and Practice, but sometimes does not answer the question. A couple themes I want to reiterate when it comes to patent law treaties is that a lot of the secondary source material that's written about them, I know we have transitioned into it, looking at sources of the actual treaties themselves, deal with the public policy issues. For example, the intellectual property rights in developing countries deals with the TRIPS agreement and policy options. There's a lot of treatise materials out there about access to medicines. If you look at Sweeten Maxwell's, now Thompson's, the TRIPS agreement drafting history and analysis, it's like the legislative history to the TRIPS agreement, which can be obtained elsewhere. But just something to think about when you're dealing with the treaties, because when you hit the secondary sources, they're going to refer you back to the primary sources. This illustrates what I've basically been talking about, that this is the card catalog, the online catalog results from a subject search onto the TRIPS agreement. If you look at the titles involved here, they're dealing a lot with public policy type issues. So one good way to do a search in the card catalog to get the text of these and treatment of these treaties is to use the subject heading. And so this is just to let you know also that there is a subject heading for the TRIPS agreement in the online catalogs that you might be using. Okay, at this point we're ready to transition from a discussion of treaties and treaty sources and tools and strategies to judicial decisions. Before we do that, just consider some of the takeaway points when it comes to treaties. What is the content, that is available on Lexis and Westlaw and other premium services compared with the content available on the open web? Is there any value added? Do you need Lexis and Westlaw or any other tool like that to do basic treaty research in terms of finding the text of the treaties? There's interpretive material and secondary sources. Do you need primary premium access points for that? Or can you use the open web for that? These are all the types of questions that you should be going on as we transition. Now we know that from the initial discussion, the introduction, that there is an interrelationship between national and international patent research. And so likewise, this carries over into the discussion of judicial decisions. There are national decisions that interpret and look at international agreements and international disagreements, as well as true international court decisions. The primary area of the world where this is applicable is Europe, the European Patent Office, the European Patent Convention. But let's continue and take a look at the sources for Europe and other courts around the world. As we've discussed before, content on Lexis and Westlaw is a moving target as the two producers move new content from the old platforms, Lexis.com, onto Lexis Advance, and Westlaw.com onto Westlaw Next. At this point in time, as you're listening to this, a majority of the materials on Lexis dealing with international law are located on Lexis.com. That may not be the case tomorrow. Things change daily. So if you're looking for U.S. cases that interpret international law, note that there is a section of the international law cases section where you can find these. And I've got these highlight, but I'm going to talk just for a minute, and you should click in if you can, at the larger section of international law cases, because it's really kind of challenging to figure out where the patent cases live in all those databases, or files as Lexis called them. But the scope note, and if you look at the I button on Lexis or Westlaw or any premium service, and even the open source services, they oftentimes will give you the scope of the information and tips on how to search it. So when I click on the I button here, and I'm doing this on my side, I see that this file, which is international law, U.S. federal, and special court cases combined, has cases from, as you would suspect, U.S. federal and special courts, and courts you might not suspect: the Court of Customs and Patent Appeals, the Court of International Trade, the Customs Court, the Claims Court, the Court of Claims, and the U.S. Tax Court. If you want to branch out, as you would think that we would do here, and look at the larger holdings of Lexis in terms of international cases, now leaving domestic U.S. cases, you need to click further on this Find Cases, View More menu, and look down the list and say to yourself, oh my God, this is a lot of files to click through, and there's no one group file that I can do a big huge search as I would on Lexis Advance or Westlaw Next and then filter down to what I'm looking for. So this is more old style searching. Pick a file and do a search and then look at the results. You can select multiple files, but there is a limit as to the number of files you can select. So if you go to Lexis.com, International Law, Find Cases, follow that trail, you'll see sort of 2 printed pages worth of courts that may have patent-related cases or not, and there are some that are counterintuitive that may have patent cases. So what's on there? What's on this menu? the International Court of Justice decisions and filings, advisory opinions, international human rights cases, international Butterworth's human rights cases, Commonwealth cases, computer and cyber law cases. That's a topical international case database. Australian state and territory case law. Eurolex, European Union cases. Not sure if you've looked at that in this course here to date. European community decisions relating to competition. When you transition over to Europe, sometimes competition law will wrap in patent law. English and Wales cases, European Court of Justice cases, Hong Kong cases, Irish cases, Malayan cases, jurisprudence of the Supreme Court of Mexico, Northern Ireland cases, New Zealand cases, Scottish cases, South African law reports. So, it really is a hodgepodge. And so you have to figure out what is your research task as you scan down the Find Cases menu in the International Law section of Lexis.com and hopefully eventually Lexis Advanced. As we transition from looking at Lexis to Westlaw, we find that it really is kind of a hodgepodge as well. If you've used Westlaw Next a lot, you'll find that there's generally half a dozen ways to do a particular search. You can start from the main page, the one box, type in what you're looking for, and then filter down. You can choose a topical area. One would hope that you could choose intellectual property, international cases, and then search that subset information. Such is not the case at this time. The next thing you might consider doing is clicking into international materials and taking a look at the cases section of there, and that's about as good as you're going to get. When you do that, you do get a strange result to the extent that you get a listing of international cases, not topical to patent, but the areas listed are Australia, Canada, European Union, Hong Kong, Korea, and United Kingdom, somewhat similar, if you think about it, to what we just talked about on Lexis. There are some things that seem to be missing that I think should be here, like Eurolex, but as I said, this is a work in progress. When you do a search in the international cases and just put in the term patent, because there are not a lot of good advanced searches, you get a lot of cases. And I'm not convinced, as I click through, that this is not a collection of cases, foreign law cases dealing with patent issues in other countries, and that they're not truly dealing with international law issues. Some are, some aren't. And this is a strange database or set of databases, because as you look at the results, you can see that some of them have what appear to be head notes, and others appear to have at the beginning little areas of indexing where patent law is one of the terms there. But when you go to the advanced search template, there's no way to limit to those areas of the document, fields as they would call it on Lexis, or segments. So it makes figuring out what's in here extremely difficult. So I'm going to leave it to you to explore this area to figure out exactly how to make it work for a patent practitioner. But what is clear is that Westlaw, as we talked about earlier in the secondary sources, has a lot of good European materials. And a lot of this sort of conglomeration of sources comes from the fact that the titles represented in the international cases area are products purchased or licensed from other data producers. So there really is no uniformity as you would get when you searched, for example, U.S. cases. There is no uniform topic and key number approach that you can take in these West cases. So it's the Wild West. Switching into areas that are a little bit more organized, the European Patent Office reports are on Westlaw. So you can search the full text decisions of the EPO decisions, the various boards of appeal, and they give cross-references to the rules of the European Patent Convention. So that's a value added. European Patent Office Reports is a Thomson Reuters publication, and it is available also in print. So you could use this if you were at a law school library or a law firm library if they had it, or you can get it on Westlaw Next. The next database from Thomson Reuters is European Patent Decisions. A little bit different than the last database we just looked at. This is a Thomson Reuters publication. It is available in print and on Westlaw Next for you to search. It also contains the Board of Appeals of the European Patent Office, but what it does is it tries to add the value of doing some organization and analytics, as you can see from the bullet points on the screen. Gives you the relevant facts, questions of law, summarized for you. That's sort of value added. Some of the decisions are followed by separate sections noting the issues arising from the decision and comments. And there are narrative sections at the beginning of the work providing you with advice on important points of European patent law. So a much more user-friendly practice-based tool for European patent case research. The next tool we're going to look at on Westlaw is the Fleet Street reports. This is one of the favorites for European patent lawyers that have done research or studied here at University of New Hampshire School of Law. It is a Thomson Reuters publication. It's available in print, so you can use it at a law library if you're near one, and also on Westlaw Next. The scope of it is a little bit broader, both in terms of geography and subject matter, because it's not dedicated to just patent decisions. But you can see the scope note here. It covers tribunals from UK, Ireland, Commonwealth, and the European Union, but it's related to IP, so you have to find the patent cases here, and industrial property. And it covers different areas. I think it really covers all areas, but this indicates that it covers such areas as software, computer contracts, biotech, pharma, and merchandising. And this publication is an oldie but a goodie. It's been around since 1966, so you can do historical research in this. But again, it has all types of IP cases, and you have to figure out how to have Westlaw Next find the patent cases for you. We're now moving from the proprietary sources such as Lexis and Westlaw over to the open web. And this is the InfoCuria website containing case law of the Court of Justice. And many people have said, oh, what's the Court of Justice have to do with patent practice? And that is a good question, but there are patent-related cases in here. If you look at the search template at InfoCuria, it does contain a really interesting feature, which is a subject matter field. So if you click on that information box, you'll get a list of subject descriptors, and there is a descriptor for intellectual, industrial, and commercial property. If you use that, you insert that, and you click let's look at the cases, you don't get that many cases. I believe you get about 68 cases in that entire area. Interestingly, when you back out of there and just do a keyword search in the text field here and just put in patent, you get a lot more cases. So that's just a strategy for this particular tool. And you can look at all of the fields here. And as with any legal research exercise, it depends on the piece of information you have. You know, you'll have a supervising attorney or a corporate supervisor that will just give you a piece of information. You know, I think there's a case out of a particular country or out of the Court of Justice that dealt with patents in this context, and you have to take all these clues and put them together into a coherent search. Continuing on our examination of European cases, and as I said at the beginning, Europe is probably the most difficult and complex area to put together. It's like a puzzle with different courts and dealing with international and national levels and patent issues. And so what we're looking at here now on Westlaw is a database called European Union Cases. You get there by going to the Westlaw home, clicking on International Materials, clicking on European Union, and then clicking on European Union Cases. You know, also, as with any other search on Westlaw, if you knew that there was a title called European Union Cases, you can also get there instantly from the one box when you sign on. So you're at the main Westlaw Next page, you type in European Union Cases, and the name of that database will appear. You click on it, and you go right to the search page. Again, this database is challenging to search because unlike searching West cases generally, these cases come from other information producers. So when you look at the advanced search template, you really don't have a lot of advanced choices. You can look at the title, you can search the title field of a case, which I did, to just sort of get a sense as to what type of patent matters are in there. And there are a good number of patent cases in this particular database. The scope of the database is broad, and one has to wonder how it compares up to on Lexis when we looked at Eurolex, which is European Union Cases. But if you look at the slide, you'll see it's the full text decisions of the Court of Justice of the European Communities, and as well as other European courts in the European community. Got judgments and orders of the Court of Justice, Official Journal of the European Community, and the coverage begins in 1954. So this database goes back in time and can serve to do historical research. But as you can see, it seems to be getting more complex. As we transition over to the European Patent Office, looking at the decisions coming out of there, it looks a lot more simple. You have a template, you have fields, look very familiar, but the complexity lies in the different types of decisions involved, and unless you are a student of international patent law or European patent law, it's going to take a learning curve to figure the entire thing out. Because if you look at the screen, there's the enlarged Board of Appeals, the Board of Appeals, and then case law from the contracting states to the European Patent Convention. You can search them there. And then if you go down bottom of the slide and look at the limit 2 area, the decision type, there's the enlarged board, the technical board, the legal board, the PCT protest cases, petitions for review under Article 112A, and the Disciplinary Board of Appeals. And the Technical Board of Appeals is further subdivided into mechanics, chemistry, physics, and electricity. So there's a lot of choices there for you to click on and a lot of fields to deal with. But this is the official site for the European Patent Office decisions, and it functions rather well. So as with all the rest of the tools that we're looking at today, the question is always, is this alternative to or complementary to something that you have to pay for? If you are doing European patent practice and you're researching in this space of European Patent Office decisions, do you need Lexis or Westlaw for any reason? We looked at some of the Westlaw European databases where they did some analytics and some commentary to help you out, and here you have the raw decisions built in. So that seems to be the sort of theme in legal research when you're looking at Lexis and Westlaw as opposed to the open web. And it's also the grist for information literacy, is evaluating these sources to try to figure out which one you would use, and if you use one over another, what are you losing and what are you gaining? So we're jumping now from Europe over to the World Trade Organization. Recall we talked about the World Trade Organization being responsible for the administration of the TRIPS agreement. So if you go to the official WTO site, they have an index of disputes that arise under the TRIPS agreement. And there is a way to filter down to TRIPS agreement disputes, and this is the result set. As you can see, one would think that there's an error here because there aren't that many, but I spoke to Professor Firking on this topic, and he said there really aren't that many disputes arising out of the TRIPS agreement. But you can look at this. One of the famous ones was DS 170. It's on the screen here. Canada is Canadian patent law dealing with the term of patent protection compliant. And so this is easy to use, but we got to wonder, is everything here? And I'm led to believe that it is. So you take a look and let me know. Here we have a slide that perhaps should have been reshuffled back a few slides to go with our look at InfoCuria at the International Court of Justice. And it sort of explained why it is that we had so many sort of problems finding patent decisions at the International Court of Justice site. This link goes to a law review in the article in the International Trade Reporter, or the Trade Law Reporter, talking about intellectual property and the International Court of Justice. And it sort of confirms what we saw as we were doing searching there. And one strategy is, if you're having a problem figuring out why you can't find information, to use a secondary source to help you advance to the next level. And this sort of helps us understand that a little bit better. This basically talks about the fact that although you can bring intellectual property disputes to the International Court of Justice, that national states have tended to avoid using the ICJ as they felt it deprived them of their sovereign power of decision making. So this particular law review article, which is not that old, said these IP matters involve sensitive issues of national policy, and so it's not surprising that there are no disputes dealing with IP arising before the ICJ. Now we see some cases in there, so really turns into a puzzle, and it's the grist for someone who really has to deal on a granular level with cases under the jurisdiction of the International Court of Justice. We're continuing our journey looking at miscellaneous access points to international patent cases. And the next tool we're going to look at is known as IIC reports, the International Review of Industrial Property and Copyright Law. This is published by the Max Planck Institute out of Europe, quite a distinguished IP think tank in Europe. And it really is a periodical that has lead articles, but it does follow with cases. Now, I possibly could have skipped over this, but I've seen it cited so many times in law review articles. Our IDEA law review article editors come with footnotes to the IIC decisions, and so people are using it. I don't see it on Lexis or Westlaw, but I do notice if you click on the hyperlink here, you'll find the PDF files of it at Max Planck Institute's website for no cost, which I think is a real a value added of Max Planck. The courts that it covers are the European Court of Justice, the European Patent Office, as well as cases from the national jurisdictions that it covers. It's very selective in its coverage, but if there's something in there, I've at times found it's one of the quickest and only access points that I can find for a particular decision. This next tool is the newest kid on the block in terms of finding it, and probably the most sophisticated, and if you look at it, it really is quite impressive, and I think it shows us the trend towards the next step in legal research tools. It's Darts IP. Darts IP deals with taking a patent number or a trademark and looking for cases that have interpreted it, and it's extremely versatile. You can filter it in many ways. This is a premium product, but it is available at UNH School of Law at no cost, as Darts IP wants to expose our students to it. So this one could take half an hour just to do a WebEx on this one. So if you want to try this out, you can go to it, and if you have problems getting in, just let me know, and I'll get you a password. We're now in the home stretch. We're heading into the final section, which deals with miscellaneous government and non-governmental organization tools and strategies that help us find and understand and keep up to date with international patent law. The first U.S. government office we're taking a look at is the U.S. Department of State. What do they offer? Well, the first thing that we would hope to find there would be the text of treaties that the U.S. is party to, but as you can see, unfortunately, the State Department says the treaty office is not equipped to serve as a routine source of first resort to texts of treaties and agreements. We urge you to explore all of the resources on this page thoroughly. So if you click on it, you can check out where the State Department would recommend you look for the text of treaties in the United States. This, of course, is an open source website, and you can explore this and do searches in here, and you possibly could find other materials on the U.S. Department of State that are relevant to international patent law and practice. The next government agency, of course, is the United States Patent and Trademark Office. The USPTO.gov website is a behemoth site. It is huge and has a lot of material, and the Patent Office is very thoughtful in trying to put as much material up here as possible. So there are various pages in here dealing with international patent law. This particular page, which you can click into, deals with the patent law treaty. It gives you resources, and the USPTO is quite good at mounting up their slide sets when they give presentations and putting up brochures that they offer in PDF format. And this is, beyond international patent legal research. It's just an amazing site. So take a look at the international section. There's as you can see from the slide, there's the Patent Cooperation Treaty section that you can look at, and so explore the USPTO.gov website. Another page at USPTO.gov that's really kind of helpful is a page put out by the Office of Policy and International Affairs. It's a listing of organizations and agencies globally. If you look at the navigation menu, it's called IP Organization and Agencies. But, you can see it deals with U.S. and then goes out to world agencies. It talks about the ITC, talks about WIPO, the World Trade Organization. It goes into regional organizations and other governmental agencies. So this is a really helpful portal page to jump into other agencies. We jump now over again to the World Trade Organization site, material on the TRIPS agreement. It's beyond just decisions coming out of the WTO. If you look at it, it has like the legislative history and around the negotiation, the various rounds of the TRIPS agreement. It has news sections. It has case studies. So it's a site that is quite in-depth and will require a bit of a learning curve to figure out all of the material that's available. But it is a user-friendly site. And this is hyperlinked so that you can visit that site. This is probably the second or third time we've seen this same slide, just to bring home the once again the idea that the World Intellectual Property Organization administers 26 treaties in the IP area. Most of the patent law treaties are administered by WIPO. So not only can you click in and get the text of the treaties, you can search the WIPO site and get slide sets and reports and programming that the WIPO has done relevant to the various treaties. The WIPO site is just an enormous site, and it takes some time to get used to. So go over and click through, and hopefully, and they also have an archival site that deals with older materials. So WIPO can bring you totally up to date and bring you totally back in time to when a lot of these patent treaties were enacted. We're now jumping over to the United States International Trade Commission, Section 337, Investigational History. As you can see, this contains summary information about Section 337 investigations, including types of unfair acts, identification of named parties and asserted IP rights. For example, patent is listed. Most people don't think of the ITC in relationship to patent disputes, but it is involved in that. So there are decisions coming out of the ITC, there's regulations coming out of the ITC, and there's all types of tools, as you can see here. There's frequently asked questions, there's docketing. It's a site that like WIPO and the USPTO.gov, needs to be just simply visited and spend some time getting to know it. We're heading back over to Europe, and I think this particular image brings home the fact that it's really difficult to do European patent research and European research in general because of the many different alliances between European nations, leading to so many different sources that you might have to look at. So what we're going to do over the next few slides is look at some of the sites, government and non-government organization sites, that have European international patent law content. Now we're back at the European Patent Office. Recall that we were over there taking a look at their court decisions, their case law and appeals interface. Now we're back at just the sort of home page. If you look at the cookie trail here, we're looking at, we've gone from the home page to the law and practice to legal text to the European Patent Convention. Now the EPO site, like WIPO and USPTO.gov, is really deep and really rich. European Patent Office is considered one of the most progressive and leading patent offices in the world. You know, as you can see here, we're dealing with the European Patent Convention that we talked about at the very beginning of the slide set. But you know, look at the types of materials that are available here. You know, they give the text, there's amendments, they give you the official journal of the Patent Office that you could, you know, keep track of changes or developments there, examination guidelines. You know, if you want to get a European patent, a patent that covers a number of countries in Europe, you need to prosecute it at the European Patent Office, and they have guidelines for examination. This is very analogous to what we talked about earlier, the Manual of Patent Examination Procedure in the United States. You can see also on the left navigation menu national laws relating to the European Patent Convention, ancillary regulations to the European Patent Convention, and an archive of material. And you just look at the various other menus here and you see how deep it is, and so you have your work cut out for you. It's not a difficult site to navigate, it's just a lot of content. We've talked about the European Union in relation to international patent legal research several times in this module. This page points to the sitemap on how the EU works. It's so complex to figure out everything in Europe that you really kind of need a roadmap, and this at least helps you figure out how the European Union works and help you decide what parts of this open source website you want to be visiting. You know, as you can see, it houses the European Court of Justice opinions, which we found in numerous other proprietary and open source websites. So this site also needs some time for you to get to know it. You know, there's the old saying in life, misery loves company. Well, there are, don't feel alone, there's a lot of patent lawyers that have to deal in this very complex area, and many of them join the American Intellectual Property Law Association, which does have a global IP practice and comparative law part to it, and there is content dealing with international and foreign practice, and you can read the menu here. You need to be a member to get to a lot of the premium content. AIPLA does give away some content at no cost, but you know, I think that we're all kind of shell-shocked at the amount of information that you potentially would need to know to practice international patent law and do research in this area. So research rule number one is to use a human being, and so joining professional organizations like AIPLA and using the materials that they have developed is a good way to go about advancing your research, because they've been through the fire like you may be going through the fire. And that also, brings us into a discussion of, keeping up to date and social networking tools, using human beings to advance our research process. Another excellent site out of Europe is at the European Commission website. And this particular slide links you to that site. The European Union has something known as the single market, and to facilitate that, there is the European Union Directive on the Enforcement of Intellectual Property Rights. The Directive on the Enforcement of IP Rights was adopted in 2004. It requires all member states to apply effective, dissuasive, and proportionate remedies and penalties against those engaged in counterfeiting and piracy, and it creates a level playing field for rights holders in the European Union. All member states have the similar set of measures, procedures, remedies available to them to defend their IP rights, including patent rights, if they're infringed. The site, like many of the other sites we've talked about, has rich content. Some of the related documents deal with civil enforcement of intellectual property rights, Conference on Enforcement of Intellectual Property Rights, reports of public hearings on this particular directive, as well as a host of other content dealing with enforcement of including patent rights in the European community. So I leave you to this site as well. We're ending up this module, as I suggested earlier, looking at news sources and continuing legal education for patent lawyers. Many of the other sites that we've looked at have built-in news functions. Either you can go to the site, you can get the news, you can sign up for newsletters to be delivered to your inbox. Some of them use the technology known as RSS, really simple syndication, where you click on an icon, looks like a little speaker, and it will flow into a news reader, and so it's like a one-stop shop for your updates to the websites of your choice. Some people find that effective. And then there's social media. So let's take a look as we wind down this module at some of these tools and strategies. You could spend a lot of time putting together your research toolbox to keep up to date and picking your favorite sources and the like. Oftentimes, it's better to spend the money and get a tool that is really robust at doing one particular thing. Many European practitioners or international patent practitioners really like the Intellectual Property Watch website. It covers all areas of IP, especially patents, but it's a premium service that gives you primary sources, certain secondary sources, and brings you up to date on the international news. Maybe you could put this together with RSS feeds or free newsletters or whatever, but international patent practice is really a niche area, and if you can find a particular tool that does it for you, consider subscribing. It's not all that expensive in relation to the other tools we've talked about. I think we have a 3-year subscription for under $1,000. So this one might be worth looking at. We do have access to this. If you want to use this, contact me. Another non-governmental organization is the Professional Association, the Intellectual Property Owners, serving the global intellectual property community. They have an International Patent Law and Practice Committee. They have newsletters. There's not a lot of free content. So this is one of these sites where you have to become an IPO member to get access not only to the content on the website, but research rule number one, the human resource, other IPO members, attorneys, and corporations that deal heavily in prosecuting and defending and leveraging international patents. I've always been quite fond of the Licensing Executive Society. I'm the faculty advisor here at the University of New Hampshire School of Law. This is the only law school in the United States that has an official chapter built into the law school. And there's LES USA and Canada, if you're in USA and Canada. But if you look on the slide, there are societies all over the world. And patent practitioners really enjoy being a member of this organization. They do have content. You have to become a member to get access to most of the content within here. But as with the IPO, there's the human resource. LES has a lot of meetings that they put out. They have webinars, and they have a lot of chapter meetings. And so it really is a social networking tool, a current awareness tool, a research tool, all built into one. If you're an attorney, you're likely a member of a bar. In the United States, each of the various states have their own rules regarding whether or not you need continuing legal education credits to keep your bar membership valid. So there is a cottage industry, if you can use that term, in continuing legal education sites. One of the more robust sites, as you would guess, is by Thomson Reuters. It's West Legal Education Center. It's kind of a brilliant concept. They are sort of an aggregator of continuing legal education of hundreds of different providers of CLE. You know, a lot of schools and non-governmental organizations provide continuing legal education that will allow you to get credit if you need it, and put it in one place at reasonable prices. So if you look at this particular slide, you know, I've done a search result for international patents, and indeed there are CLEs, continuing legal education, you know, webcasts and podcasts and on demand for a reasonable amount of money. And so I do suggest this. There are other open source ones that are less expensive, but you know, these prices are not bad. And in addition to getting the CLE, if you just want to keep up to date and enhance your degree as you graduate into the next level, you can use CLE as a non-mandatory way to continue your education when you leave your graduate program. As suggested, continuing legal education in the United States and in other countries is really provided by a number of governmental and non-governmental organizations. To use an example here, for decades, the University of New Hampshire School of Law has hosted the World Intellectual Property Organization in the annual PCT seminar, which goes over the changes in PCT practice over the last 12 months. And, you know, it really is a remarkable presentation that takes 2 days. But if you are an attorney or a paraprofessional, such as a paralegal who does all of the PCT documentation, this is just quite invaluable and at a reasonable price. And this is vended through law schools if you're in the Boston area, you can get it there. Most major cities offer these PCT seminars. One favorite current awareness tool that is also serves at times as a social networking tool, as well as a Web 2.0 tool, meaning that you can comment publicly on the postings that are up there, are blogs. So let's take a look at some of the blogs in the patent and international patent area that might be of use to you. So what are the uses of blogs in the international patent law space? Well, they can get you early news. They can get you copies of legal and policy documents. Oftentimes, one of the earliest occurrences of a document is when a blogger posts it before it hits official sites or premium sites such as Lexis and Westlaw. You can get early commentary on legal and policy issues and documents. Oftentimes, when an event happens, a blogger will discuss it. So you have to use information literacy skills to evaluate who the blogger is and whether what amount of guidance to take from them. Blogs can give you links to other helpful tools. They can give you links to brand new reports. Bloggers keep their eyes on their area of practice, and just again, be mindful of who the blogger producer is. Another thing to remember is that a good number of blogs are syndicated on Lexis and Westlaw, which means that Lexis and Westlaw are now considering selected blogs that they vet as secondary sources that you may find in one of your searches. Lexis and Westlaw have a link that say blogs, and you can search blogs. One of the blogs that law students at the UNH School of Law like is Patent.leo, and of course they can get it on the open web, but it's nice to have the results come up on a Westlaw search if they want to. It's easier than searching the Patent.leo website. So it's a new world, and to what extent blogs are going to become like law reviews is a question that's evolving today as we speak. One of the questions that's often asked, and I talk about this in every guest lecture, is how do I find blogs on a particular subject? It's evolved over time. As I mentioned, really good selective blogs are on Lexis and Westlaw now. They're syndicated through there. But Justia.com has a blog, and BLAWG is, law blog slang. Gives you a search engine, and so you can search blog entries to find the blogs that you're interested in. And Justia also offers a topical outline of blogs, so you can click into patent law blogs and then scan the list and choose the ones that seem to have an international flavor to them. The other thing you can do is, I don't know if you're aware, but there's a specialized search engine for blogs called Google Blog Search, and you can do an advanced search, and you can enter in international patent terms or issues that you're looking at, and maybe discover those golden nugget blogs that you want to watch and keep track of. And just to put two and two together, we talked about RSS, really simple syndication. Blogs were built RSS enabled. So if you like that technology using a news reader, you can point it at your blogs of your choice in international patent law, and it will deliver the sort of results into your news reader on a regular basis. Let's just take a couple moments as we conclude this module to look at some of the blogs that are centered on international patent practice. One of them is the EP Law Patent blog. And part of when you're using a blog is really looking at the blog and who is the blogger here, and this has an editorial board, and how often do they come out, and so you really have to evaluate from an information literacy standpoint the blogs that you're going to use. Now, consistent with the looking at secondary sources or international patent tools in general, I talked about it being a mix and match game. So here's an example of a blog, a Patent Docs blog, that is, it's a patent blog, but it's a sort of a niche blog because it deals with biotech and pharma patent law, but it has an international section to it. This is what I was talking about in an earlier part of this module. So you, of course, would want to go to the left and look at the authors, look at their backgrounds, the contributors. Who are the contributors? Are they students? Are they professors? Are they practitioners? And then, maybe do your news feed based on the international IP section of this blog, since you may not be interested in the blog in its entirety. Switching to a tool that many of us are really fond of is LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a great way to keep track of your people you went to school with, people you've worked with, people you work with, people who you want to connect with, people who recommend you, and you can recommend them. But there's a feature to LinkedIn that some people really like and some people have never discovered, which is LinkedIn groups. And there are a good number of LinkedIn groups dealing with international patent law, as you can see from the screen. And some of these are, finding international patent lawyers. Others are, LES is on here, Licensing Executive Society. Some are organizations. And the real challenge is to try out these groups and see to what extent do they add value to your practice process. Do they bring you really up-to-date news? Do they point you to documents that are late-breaking documents that you can get there before you can get other places? How do LinkedIn group postings stack up next to blog entries? These are the types of information literacy things, topics that legal research professors keep their eye on a regular basis as tools and strategies for legal research in general emerge. Just a couple other tools to consider before we are done with this module, so stand by. For those of you who went to U.S. Law School, you're probably familiar with CALI, the Center for Computer Assisted Legal Instruction. And as I went through the CALI tutorial list, I found several that I thought might be interested if you're a newbie to the area. For example, there is a CALI tutorial, an introduction to TRIPS by Cynthia Ho, who's an associate professor at Loyola, and TRIPS Advanced Topics. A lot of people wouldn't think to look there. If you want access to CALI tutorials as a student at UNH School of Law, you are entitled to a password, and you can get that by emailing myself or Tom Hemstock. When I give guest lectures and other doctrinal classes in intellectual property, I do like to, at least at the end, mention apps. A lot more of you are practicing law using mobile devices. That could be an iPhone or an Android phone or an iPad or some type of tablet that you take on the road. You don't need a desktop or a laptop to do legal research, as you know. You could do it on your TV set if you wanted to. But if you want to do some research on your phone, just keep an eye out. Lexis and Westlaw, as well as other sites, do offer apps to their sites. Also, you can go out there looking for free and low-fee apps in the international patent area. This is an app, for example, that deals with PCT practice. And so we're looking at the PTC rules. And so if you want to consume primary sources or secondary sources this way, you can. And they'll be becoming more and more of them available to you. We've done it. We've done it. We've done it. We've reached the end of the module. But as with life in general, the end is just the beginning. Because, as you graduate and receive your beautiful diploma, you have to realize, of course, that you have to keep up to date. And it's courses like international legal research that will help you look at the tools that you need to keep up to date. Now, I know some of you are patent folk and other of you are not patent folk, so God bless the non-patent folk for hanging in there with me. But, there's an old saying that before there's order, there's chaos. So if you feel at this moment like you're in a state of chaos because, how do you deal with Europe, and how do you deal with all the international, and what's the jurisdiction, and why would this court be doing patent cases or whatever? We're all in this together. Thank you, and I will be putting together a worksheet for you, so keep an eye out.